how do we deny technology to the Chinese for their digital Silk Road? So this is the framework. Everything is operating in this framework, in my assessment. Now we come to the nitty-gritties. What is it about? So when the Biden administration came into office, they have really doubled up the efforts. While it is said that this is a bipartisan thing in America today, the challenge of China, which is true, but the Biden administration, the Democrats have put it on the fast track. And this can be explained by the fact that, first of all, in March 2021, the first virtual summit was held of the Quad. This was the first virtual summit. And within 6 months, in September 2021, the physical summit was also held. Now, this says a lot. When you have two summits within 6 months, you are talking of centrality of the Quad to the Indo-Pacific strategy. Period. This is what you're talking of. Now, when I say Indo-Pacific strategy, what the Americans have done is, in May 2018, they brought India on board. What used to be called the Asia-Pacific strategy or the Pacific PACCOM of the Americans, now is being, in May 2018, it came to be known, it was renamed as the Indo-Pacific Command. The whole idea was to give a centrality to the Indian Ocean region and bring India on board. Now, what we are saying is this security architecture will cover the Indo-Pacific region and their area of responsibility. Incidentally, that area of responsibility now actually has gone to East Africa also. It has actually expanded so much, their area of responsibility. So within this, there are 5 things happening, which are part of this to secure this architecture and to constrain, as I explained, the maritime Silk Road and the digital Silk Road. So the first thing is that the Biden administration came up with what is called the Pacific Deterrence Initiative. Now, what is this initiative? This initiative is that in the Western Pacific region, where you have these problem of South China Sea going on, where you have the Taiwan Straits, where you have the problem of East China Sea, all these problems are there. The worry of the Americans consistently has been that China has very powerful, what they call anti-access area defense capabilities. And this is what the Chinese call, the Chinese version of A2AD is the counter-intervention strategy. This basically means it involves a lot of missiles, land-based systems, land-based ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, all land-based. And it involves a whole lot of things, the emerging technologies like laser weapons, everything will come in this rubric. The idea is to keep the Americans constrained and to keep them as much away from the Chinese. Now, the worry of the Americans came about once the militarization of the South China Sea reclaimed islands, the islands which were reclaimed by the PLA, by China, they started militarizing it. This is when it was felt by the American military that today, once they have the missiles on these reclaimed island of South China Sea, they will be able to reach as far as Oceania, those 14 countries which are there around Australia. So this will be the reach. And so the first issue that came about was that because now there is a worry about the land-based missiles, 2 steps have to be taken. What were the 2 steps? The first step was in 2018, President Trump pulled out of the INF treaty. That was pulled out because it was felt that it was giving advantage to the Chinese, and which it was, because China was never part of that. This was done by the 2 blocs, the 2 superpowers during the Cold War. So this was one action. The second action was that there was a need to disperse the assets. Because if the Chinese were to get at one of the American bases, they could destroy their things in one go. So the idea was that instead of having few bases, then there is a need to have diffused assets in so many more bases. So this is what is called the Pacific Deterrence Initiative. This whole thing, that how do we disperse and we then create a deterrence of our own. So the idea was we will have our own hypersonic missiles, we will have land-based cruise missiles, land-based ballistic missiles, and what we will do is we will have them across the dispersed bases. This whole thing is being done to constrain the PLA within the Western Pacific Ocean. This is one thing. Now, the second initiative is what is known as the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, the alliance between Australia, Canada, New Zealand, UK, and US. Now, these is basically sharing of intelligence. This becomes very important. And one of the key things which should be shared is where is exactly the technology going? What is the problem with technology is, I'm just digressing to make the point. The problem with technology is that because now the world is entering into the fourth industrial revolution. See, the third industrial revolution was about the digital age, digitizations. Now we are talking of artificial intelligence and data. And the backbone of this fourth industrial revolution will be 5G. And Huawei 5G is by far, it has progressed far than the competitors. It has been adopted by a lot of BRI countries and even countries which are not part of BRI like Hungary. They are also now trying to get on board. So the worry was that if you have more and more countries which adapt the Chinese emerging technology, especially 5G Huawei, then China will set the standards. The worry is China setting the standards, because whichever country sets the standards, then you have to do the interoperability, your routers, your other systems, they have to then conform to the standard which is set by the country which sets the standard. So to deny China setting the standards. So that is what the one part of the intelligence will do. So the next initiative is, what is the Quad itself? Now the Quad, as rightly mentioned by General Lodhi, this is key to the whole thing. Why this is key is, I believe this provides the policy framework to the Indo-Pacific strategy of the Americans. And here, India will play a very important role in this strategy. Which is why, as I explained, they changed the name also to Indo-Pacific. But this is a subject which we can perhaps tackle in the question answer session. So Quad is another initiative which is there. Now the next initiative, as again mentioned, was AUKUS, which is the Australia, UK, and US, which is a very recent thing. In any case, they are allies. All these three countries are military allies. So what the Australians have done is that they have cancelled the deal they had for the conventional submarines with the French. And instead, the Americans and the British, they are saying that we will provide you the nuclear-powered submarines. Now, you see, this makes a sensational news. But the truth of the matter is, this is not an easy thing at all. Why it is not easy is that even for something like a nuclear-powered submarine for a country even like Australia, to operationalize them will take something like 10 years. Now, what will happen in 10 years? Please, let's understand the robotization of war is happening. As the commercial world is moving into the fourth industrial revolution, the war also is moving. And the war will be robotized. And again, China is in the forefront here, competing with America. So the long and short is, what exactly will be done by a nuclear-powered submarine? Will it be crewed? crew will be there? Will it be manned? And how will the unmanned systems fit with it? What I'm trying to point out is that there are technical, there are operational issues which need to be tackled. So it is not that this deal has been signed and tomorrow they will get and they'll start operating the nuclear submarines. Nothing of that sort will happen. From the American perspective, it is a commitment reinforced by one of their military allies. You see, Australia has a military alliance going back to 1951 with the Americans. So it's a reinforcement of that. Basically, they will now cover the southern part of the Pacific Ocean. This is what the Australia and Oceania, all that area, they will be looking at. So India has the role to play in the Indian Ocean region. So this is basically what we see in all this is what is happening. All the initiatives, as I said, these 5 initiatives taken by the Biden administration, they all are focused on the military aspect. Now, this is where I think they give the upper hand to the Chinese, because Chinese have been smarter. Chinese have commerce, trade, prosperity in the vanguard. And no country, I mean, China can talk to any country, no country will say that, look, I don't want prosperity. Everybody wants prosperity. So now what is the Chinese counter to this? What they are doing? So first of all, they are trying to commercially outflank the Quad through the initiatives of RCEP, which is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, through the recently finalized EU-China Investment Agreement. And now they have also put in an application to join the successor of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, from which the Americans pulled out when the Trump administration came into office. They pulled out from there. So basically, they want to be everywhere. Let's be very clear. Today, China is the largest trading partner in the world. There is no global supply chain which does not have China in it. So all this talk about a second Cold War that the Americans keep talking is all nonsense. It's all baloney. There cannot be, I'm not getting into right now explaining what was the Cold War, what were its attributes, and how this one will be different. This is a subject we can talk another time because it has relevance today. But sticking to the subject that has been given to me, so the first key thing is that they are trying to commercially outflank the security aspects through the BRI. Now, what is the other thing they are doing? Other thing they are doing is that they are in talks with ASEAN. You see, ASEAN was the first, there were 2 countries in ASEAN, Malaysia and Indonesia, which are directly affected. You see, these are the countries which expressed their reservations, their apprehensions the moment this AUKUS deal was announced. Because they said that, look, this will raise the temperatures in our region and we don't want that. And in any case, to put it on record, the annual trade between ASEAN and China today is close to $900 billion, which is a hell of a lot. Their projects their infrastructure projects are being done by the Chinese companies. So obviously they do not want tensions in their area. So the Chinese are in talk with them. The whole idea is to break this whole thing, what the Americans are trying to put together. The third thing is, as we all have heard, yesterday Xi Jinping made the effort to speak with the new Japanese Prime Minister. The new Japanese Prime Minister, she has spoken to him and he has basically spoken about close ties and development projects with Japan. Now, Japan is part of all these things, and Japan has always been, I mean, though it's a ally of the Americans, but it has always been very careful about its trade with China. It will not like to jeopardize its trade with China. So that is the next thing that they have done. Next, what the Chinese are doing is they are strengthening, as part of the BRI, they are strengthening their security arrangements, which are in the form of cooperation, collaboration. Cooperation is bilateral. For example, between China and Pakistan. Collaboration is multilateral, like SCO. That is collaboration. Next, what they have done is they have strengthened or they are strengthening their military, strategic, and technical cooperation with Russia. Next, what they have done is, see, these are those very carefully crafted countermeasures, but they do not head-on collide with the American security structure. So this itself, a possibility of a war is ruled out. So next, what they have done is, if you recall in 2017, when the first BRI forum was held in Beijing under chairmanship of Xi Jinping, that is the time the UN Secretary General, UN Secretary General had formally accepted that the Sustainable Development Goals, which is it's a UN project, which is basically providing it is a huge project which started in 2014 and it will continue till 2030, and this will provide a lot of money and to the developing and less developed nations. So it was officially endorsed by the UN Secretary General that the BRI should be assimilated with the Sustainable Development Goals. That means they have actually gone into the United Nations. See the irony of the whole thing. The irony of the whole thing is that the Americans have created the UN after the Second World War. And it is now the Chinese who are basically playing a big role in the UN. This whole security architecture of the Americans is outside the UN. But the Chinese are involving the UN. For example, Chinese are the second largest contributors in terms of finances to the UN after the Americans. But, and here is the but, they have always paid their dues on time, which cannot be said of the Americans. Then the Chinese have announced that we have a standing force of 8,000 soldiers for the UN peacekeeping. They have kept it there. So basically, they are also working through that. Now, in any case, they have a special relationship with Pakistan. I don't have to dwell on that, but I am absolutely certain that if Pakistan, this is my assessment, don't take it amiss, if Pakistan can get its politics correct, you have prosperity in your hand. This is the way I see it. You can do the connectivity to your CPEC and through the peace subsea cables that you are taking to East Africa. All this is doable. Because Gwadar will at some stage become the hub. How soon is up to the Pakistani state and their government, what they do with it. But the Chinese have been very clever. They opened a base which they call the logistics support system or base in Djibouti. What they have done by that is, first of all, it has proximity to Gwadar. And second, earlier they had the problem in the Strait of Malacca. They could bypass that through the Eurasian landmass, their connectivity there. Now they will be able to now guard all their traffic, the commercial traffic coming through the Europe to the Indian Ocean region by keeping an eye of Strait of Hormuz and the Bab al-Mandeb. That's the key, this thing, node is there. So basically, The Pakistanis are on one side, the Chinese, Djibouti are there. In any case, you see, they've been doing long voyages since 2008 under the garb of anti-piracy operations. The Chinese naval ships, where they could test their endurance, where they could test the waters of the Indian Ocean region. They have done the hydrographic surveys of this ocean, and then they have a resting a logistic base in Djibouti. So the point I'm making is, what I'm trying to say is very simple, that the Americans have always been focused on the military aspect. Although President Biden has spoken about something called Build Back and Better World, which is abbreviated as B3W. You see, the point of the matter is that who will pay the money, what will happen? Nothing will happen, in my assessment. It will just remain acronym what it is. So everything then boils down to, this is my last point on the Americans I want to make. Everything boils down to what they call the integrated deterrence. What is integrated deterrence? Integrated deterrence is what they are looking at, how to fight a future war with China. And this is also known as joint all domain operations. And this is where eventually all these Quad countries will fit in. And their strategic partners like India will fit in. So the operational part, there is, let's put it like this, as far as Americans are concerned, they have an Indo-Pacific strategy. The policy guidelines or the centrality to that is provided by the Quad, and the operational aspect will be provided by the integrated deterrence. And AUKUS and 5G, everything converges into this. On the other hand, what the Chinese have is an entirely different security system based on cooperation, collaboration, and commercially outflanking the Americans and ensuring that the partnerships that they are creating in the various regions, they do not fructify. You know, this I have given a very broad overview of where Quad, where the security architecture fits in. And I'm very happy to, to get in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pravin. And I think you anticipated it correctly that you have given the framework, but now we'll get into some discussion. Initially, what I'll do is that I'll rake out certain issues and we can both discuss amongst each other. Basically, you will be talking. You are very, I'm very happy you covered nearly everything and cleared many of our doubts. In your opening remarks, you said something very intriguing, and we'll discuss it some other day, that world is transiting, although we see that the world is transiting from unipolar to multipolar, but in your opinion, it is again going to be unipolar. So we can understand what you're hinting at, but I think someday we'll discuss that. You very aptly covered the rule-based order, American rule-based order. Whose rules? I think a very good question. And you talked about the denial of maritime Silk Route, retail internet and industrial internet. That was addition to my knowledge. Thank you very much for that. I don't know whether we are going, this world would be, as they call it, Thucydides trap. Will that happen or not happen? You can tell us later on. And so many things. What Americans are actually eyeing at, what they are doing. And you also covered that what countermeasures the Chinese are taking, and their philosophy is very different. So one thing which just occurred to me, that if you allow, I'll give this video to our National Defense University also, and they will give you the credit also. I will ask them to run it for their faculty. There are so many good things which you have mentioned. So my first thing is that we know that, and you have covered it also, that Chinese are ascending as far as the economy is concerned, and also technology. but they are still behind America as far as military power, technology, and even political clout is concerned. Of course, they have nearly overtaken them as far as the economy is concerned. So, if you were the American think tank, or let us say their strategic thinker, at what time the Americans would be thinking of engaging China militarily, or in other ways other than economy, because we do understand that even militarily means a lot as far as nowadays is concerned. So, in your opinion, will they wait for the Chinese to come at par militarily and technologically also, or they would like to preempt? Because you're talking about deterrence. Deterrence means that they just don't want Chinese to go a certain way. But will they actually do something to make a dent, a preemptive dent in the Chinese ascendancy elsewhere other than economy? Thank you.
Thank you very much, General Lodhi. First of all, it's a good idea to give the video to the National Defense University. And I want this, in fact, that is why I was suggesting, please put it on the social media also, because this is how you generate the discussions. There's nothing classified that I have spoken. These are all my analysis, and I'm very happy to share that. Now, coming to a good question that you have put to me about a military engagement and at what stage. Now, we all have, done some, I have done a bit of service in the military, plus done a lot of reading. What happens is that a country only goes to war when it feels that it can control the war, when it can control the escalation ladder. So, the reason why America and China today are building conventional deterrence as well as nuclear deterrence is that neither side will be, first of all, sure of war control. Neither side will be confident that if the war is joined, we'll be able to sort of control it or go, it can go according to a plan. Number two, the problem gets aggravated because of the emerging technologies and artificial intelligence. This is where both the countries are putting a lot of money, and this is where I said that the war, not only the character of war, the nature of war will change also. Let me explain this. The character of war basically means it keeps changing whenever the technology is inducted into any military. Then what they do is they come up with new war concepts so that they can optimize the use of the new technology. That is called the character of war. Nature of war is basically about violence and bloodshed.
Right.
And the nature of war has been constant right from when war came into being, or what we know of war. But now we see a possibility, if the war will be robotized, will the nature of war also change? I mean, this is another debate we should take on another day. You see, a robotized war, then who wins? So when we are talking of this artificial intelligence and new technologies, we are not talking of tangible assets. We are not talking of hardware. We are talking of software. And the other side will never know. There's nothing called an arms race in emerging technology. It is not that you have 10 tanks and he has 50 tanks, so there is an arms race, you have to catch up. You don't even know that this guy has got killer robots, because all that needs is a software change. You don't know that. So the point I'm making is that all that is happening today in South China Sea, it's happening in Taiwan Strait. These are operations what are called the gray zone operations, below the threshold of war. If you recall, the Americans were very keen. They have put in repeated requests that they would want their Defense Secretary General Lloyd Austin to meet up with the number 2 man, the senior most Vice Chairman Shi Long. Whatever his name's pronunciation, I generally get it wrong, but you would have understood what I'm saying. So, but the Chinese have denied it. Why the Chinese have denied it is because the Chinese do not want to spell out their red lines. Because if they spell out the red line, that the Americans can do a lot below the red lines, within those red lines. And which is why Biden has made it very clear that our relationship with China will be 3 C's. It will be confrontation, it will be cooperation, and it will be competition. So the confrontation, to my mind, will be minimal. And what happens will happen in the gray zone areas. So I rule out completely a war. There will be no war at all between America and China, and anybody who is talking of war does not make any sense to me. As a person who's been studying war for, nearly 4 decades now, it does not make sense at all, because why would I want to go to war? If a war is thrust on me, I can understand. I have to fight. But why will I initiate war if I cannot achieve my tangible objectives, and if I cannot, to achieve the tangible objectives, if I cannot do war control? You see, so it will be about denial, it will be about deterrence. That is my assessment on the subject. Thank you.